The rain had been steady since dawn. It tapped against the windows of the small corner café, filling the room with a soft, calming sound. Inside, the air smelled of fresh coffee beans and warm pastries. A few people sat at tables, lost in their own thoughts, reading newspapers or scrolling through their phones. At the counter, Daniel stood with his worn backpack resting against his shoulder. He was in his late 20s, tall, with dark hair that curled slightly from the damp air outside. His clothes were plain, a little faded, but clean. He looked like someone who worked hard, someone who counted every coin before spending it. He ordered a black coffee, the cheapest item on the menu. His voice was quiet, respectful. As he reached into his wallet, the woman behind him noticed how careful he was with his money, how he double-checked before placing the bills on the counter. She was Clara, though no one in the shop knew her name. To everyone else, she was just another customer waiting in line. Her casual sweater and jeans gave no sign of who she truly was. But behind her calm expression and soft gaze, she carried a story very few knew. Clara was the CEO of a growing company, a woman who had built her career from the ground up. And yet, despite her success, she often came here, to this small café. Not for the coffee, but for the quiet and the chance to watch people live their ordinary lives. That morning, her eyes lingered on Daniel. She had seen him here before, always ordering the same small cup, always sitting by the window with a notebook open. He seemed thoughtful, sometimes lost in his own world, but never unkind. Something about him caught her attention in a way that others did not. When the cashier called out the total for her order, Clara stepped forward, but just then, Daniel's card declined. The machine beeped, and the cashier looked apologetic. Daniel's face turned slightly red as he reached into his pockets, searching for a few coins. He apologized softly, trying not to draw attention. Before he could say more, Clara's voice broke the silence. "I'll take care of it," she said gently, handing her card to the cashier. Daniel looked up, surprised. "You don't have to," he said, almost embarrassed. "I know," Clara replied, her tone calm and kind. "But I want to." The cashier swiped her card, and the payment went through. Daniel stood there, unsure of what to say, until finally, he whispered, "Thank you." Clara smiled. Not the polite kind, but a genuine one. "It's just coffee," she said, as if it were nothing. But to Daniel, it was not just coffee. It was kindness at a moment when he felt small. He took the cup, nodding once more before stepping aside. Clara ordered her own drink and followed him to the seating area. She watched as he settled by the window, his notebook open again, pen in hand. The rain outside softened the world into muted colors. Inside, the cafe felt like a safe place, warm and steady. Clara sat 2 tables away, her cup untouched, her eyes drifting toward Daniel. She wondered what his story was, why he always looked so thoughtful, and what filled the pages of his worn notebook. For her, it was not just a chance encounter. She had been watching him for weeks, curious about the quiet man who seemed invisible to everyone else. She did not know yet where this moment would lead, but something told her it mattered. Daniel sat by the window, the steam from his coffee rising slowly, blending with the cool air. His notebook lay open, filled with small, careful handwriting. The pen in his hand moved with steady strokes, pausing every few lines as he looked outside, as if the rain itself gave him the words. Clara sipped her latte, but kept her eyes on him. She had always believed you could learn much about someone by how they behaved when they thought no one was watching. Daniel's posture told a story of quiet resilience. He didn't slouch with defeat, but he didn't sit with arrogance either. He sat like someone who had been through enough to know the weight of life, yet still held on to hope. He flipped a page in his notebook, and Clara caught sight of small sketches along the margins, trees, rooftops, even the coffee cup before him. He wasn't just writing, he was capturing pieces of the world in his own way. The cafe grew busier as the rain continued. The sound of conversation rose, but Daniel seemed unaffected. His focus stayed on the page, his hand steady, his coffee slowly cooling. Clara found herself admiring the calm he carried. Many people rushed through life, but he took his time. She remembered the look on his face when his card was declined, the quiet panic, the embarrassment. She knew that feeling well, though few would guess it about her. Years ago, before the success, before the company she now ran, she had stood in the same place, fumbling with a card that wouldn't work. Back then, no one had stepped in. She had walked away empty-handed, carrying both hunger and humiliation. That memory had never left her. Perhaps that was why she paid for his coffee so quickly. It wasn't pity, but recognition. She understood how much even small kindness could mean in that moment. As she sat there, she wondered if she should say something more, introduce herself, ask what he was writing, but she stayed silent. She didn't want to intrude on his world. Not yet. Daniel finally lifted his coffee to his lips. The warmth seemed to ease him, and for a moment, his face softened. He looked younger when he relaxed, like someone who hadn't yet given up on his dreams. He glanced toward the counter, his eyes landing briefly on Clara. Their gazes met. Clara smiled, small and polite. Daniel gave a slight nod, an acknowledgement of her earlier kindness, before returning to his notebook. The rain outside grew heavier, streaking the windows in silver lines. Cars passed slowly, their headlights blurred. Inside, the cafe lights glowed softly, casting warm reflections on the polished wooden tables. It felt like the kind of afternoon that could stretch forever, timeless and unhurried. Clara's phone buzzed in her bag. She ignored it. The world outside her company, her meetings, her endless responsibilities, none of it mattered here. Not in this small corner cafe, not with this quiet stranger who wrote as if the rain had given him secrets to put on paper. After a while, Daniel closed his notebook and slipped it into his backpack. He finished the last sip of his coffee, then stood. Clara expected him to leave without another word, but instead, he walked toward her table. "Thank you again," he said softly. His voice carried a note of sincerity that was rare. Clara looked up. "You're welcome. It was no trouble." He hesitated, then added, "I'll pay you back." She shook her head lightly. "It's just a cup of coffee. You don't need to." His eyes held hers for a moment, steady and searching. He nodded once, then adjusted his backpack strap. Without another word, he walked out into the rain. Clara watched him go, her heart unexpectedly heavy. She realized she wanted to know more about him, more than just the glimpse of a quiet man in a cafe. She wanted to know the life behind the notebook, the reason for the weight in his eyes, the dreams hidden in his words and sketches. But for now, he was gone, and all she had was the sound of rain and the memory of his voice. A week passed, and the rain returned as if it had never left. The cafe glowed warmly against the grey evening, its windows fogged from the damp air outside. Inside, Daniel sat in his familiar spot by the window. His notebook lay open, the pages filled with more words, more sketches. His coffee sat untouched, cooling beside him. Clara pushed open the door, shaking off her umbrella. She spotted him instantly. He hadn't changed much. The same worn backpack rested at his feet. The same quiet focus lingered in his posture. Yet something about him drew her in even more than before. She ordered her usual latte, and without thinking twice, walked toward his table. Daniel looked up, surprised to see her. His eyes softened with recognition. "Hello again," Clara said, her tone casual but warm. "Hi," he replied, a little uncertain but polite. She gestured to the empty chair. "May I?" Daniel hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Of course." Clara sat down, placing her latte on the table. For a moment, they both watched the rain slide down the glass, silent except for the murmur of voices around them. "You come here often," Clara said gently. Daniel gave a small smile. "So do you." She laughed softly, appreciating his quickness. "You're right. I guess we both like quiet places." Daniel nodded. His hand brushed over the edge of his notebook. Clara's eyes followed the motion. "You right," she said more as a statement than a question. "A little," Daniel admitted. "It helps me think. May I ask what you write about?" He looked at her, studying her expression, as if deciding whether to answer. Finally, he said, "Life, moments, things people miss when they're in a hurry." Clara felt a flicker of recognition in his words. She too had built her company by noticing what others overlooked, small needs that grew into something larger. She admired that in him. "That's rare," she said quietly. "Most people don't stop to notice." Daniel shrugged, his gaze dropping back to the window. "Maybe, but noticing is all I have right now." His words carried weight, and Clara sensed the unspoken truth behind them. She wanted to ask more, but she also didn't want to push too hard. Instead, she said, "Well, I'm glad you write. The world needs people who pay attention." Daniel's eyes lifted to hers again, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them. They sat like that, sharing silence and the sound of rain. Two strangers who didn't feel like strangers anymore. Days turned into another week, and their encounters grew less accidental. Clara found herself looking forward to the quiet afternoons in the cafe. Daniel, though cautious, began to welcome her presence. Their conversations stretched longer each time, moving from small talk to deeper reflections. One morning, Clara suggested they meet outside the café. "There's a park nearby," she said. "It's quieter, and you might find more to write about there." Daniel agreed, though his hesitation showed. Still, he arrived on time, notebook in hand. Clara brought 2 coffees, handing him one with a smile. They sat together on a bench beneath tall trees, the early sun filtering through the leaves. Daniel opened his notebook, but instead of writing, he let it rest on his lap. Clara sipped her coffee, watching the children play in the distance. "It's peaceful here," he said softly. "It is," Clara agreed. "Do you come often?" Not really. I don't always have the time." He paused, then added, "or the reason." Clara studied him. "And now?" Daniel glanced at her, then away. "Now I do." Her chest warmed at his words. She didn't press further. Instead, she asked, "What do you want to do, Daniel, with your writing?" He hesitated. "I'd like to publish someday, maybe a collection of stories, but it feels far away, too far sometimes." Clara listened carefully. She knew the feeling of dreams that seemed impossible. She had lived through it. What he didn't know was that she was in a position to help, but she kept her identity quiet, not wanting to change the way he saw her. "You shouldn't give up," she said firmly. "Dreams don't stay far if you keep walking toward them." Daniel smiled faintly, though his eyes held doubt. "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple," Clara admitted, "but it's possible." They sat in silence for a while, the sounds of the park surrounding them. Birds sang from the branches. A breeze carried the scent of grass and earth. Daniel finally opened his notebook and began to write. Clara watched his pen move, steady and sure. She realized then that she didn't just want to help him, she wanted to be part of his journey, to see where his words could take him. It was late evening when they met again in the café. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets shining with reflections of neon lights. Inside, the café was quieter than usual. Daniel sat with his notebook, while Clara stirred her coffee slowly. She had carried the truth long enough. Tonight, she decided he needed to know. "Daniel," she began softly. He looked up, sensing the change in her tone. "There's something I haven't told you." His brow furrowed slightly. But he waited. "I'm not just someone who comes here for coffee," she said carefully. "I run a company. I'm its CEO." Daniel blinked, clearly caught off guard. He searched her face, trying to understand if she was serious. "You?" he asked finally. Clara nodded. "Yes, I didn't want to tell you before. I didn't want it to change how you saw me." Silence hung between them, broken only by the soft hum of the coffee machines. Daniel leaned back, his mind working through the revelation. "I don't understand," he admitted. Why spend time with me?" Clara met his gaze steadily. "Because you're different. You notice things. You care about things most people ignore. You reminded me of who I used to be, before all of this." Daniel's expression shifted, still uncertain but touched. "And the coffee, that day?" Clara smiled faintly. "I knew how it felt. To stand there, card declined, pretending it didn't matter. I've been there. I couldn't just watch." Daniel looked down at his notebook, his fingers brushing the edge of the pages. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Clara replied. "I just wanted you to know. And if you ever want help with your writing, with getting it out there, I can make that possible." For a long moment, Daniel was quiet. Then he said, "I don't want charity." "It wouldn't be charity," Clara said firmly. "It would be belief, because I believe in you." His eyes lifted to hers, and in them, she saw both doubt and gratitude. Slowly, his shoulders relaxed. "Thank you," he said at last, his voice low but steady. The city lights glowed through the windows, casting soft colors on the walls. The café felt like the center of a small, hidden world, where 2 unlikely lives had met. They sat there until closing, not as a millionaire CEO and a struggling writer, but simply as 2 people who had found something rare in each other: understanding, kindness, and the quiet beginning of trust. For Daniel, it was a reminder that kindness could change a day, and perhaps even a life. For Clara, it was proof that even success could not replace the simple beauty of connection. And as they walked out into the cool night, side by side, both knew this was not the end but the beginning of a story still being written.